And we are live. So I'm here with Eric from Hey Internet. Eric here. Eric is a friend of the show pretty much from day one. And we were just saying we haven't seen each other in a minute since the Terminator.
That was fun.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun to talk the Terminator. And I think not long after that, I think I said that I owned Terminator and then Terminator 2 on Blu-ray. And then I was going through some bookstore, Books A Million, that had some used DVDs and Blu-rays. And if you have a Books A Million that's close to you, I think they're going to stop selling those at the end of the year by like Christmas, which is a great loss, I consider, because I've just gotten so many good deals out of there. But I found a copy of Terminator 3, which I think kind of holds up. I love watching Nick Stahl. He's just a very underrated performer, I feel. And I liked, what's her name? Claire Danes. Claire Danes, I thought was solid in it, and that was real good. And it was great to see Arnold again. But then I looked again, and I saw a copy of, I saw like a 2-disc set between that and Terminator Salvation. I don't think the Terminator Salvation holds up at all. It has a couple of moments here and there, but I was just glad to put it all together, and I think that was not long after our episode, so I was still sort of buzzing for some Terminator. But here, there's absolutely no sci-fi at all. We're here, as you were saying, now on our, I think our third or fourth collab, but we're working on some Stallone.
Yeah, I think this is number 3. Yeah, because last time was Terminator, and the first time we got together, we were talking horror. We were doing Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2. So
yeah, well, that's always worthwhile. That's always worthwhile talking about. All right, so let's just get to some Stallone. Are you ready to go?
Born ready.
All right, brother. Here we go. So I was just I can't believe it because, obviously I just turned 25 last week. But
well, happy 25th.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're coming up on 40 years of this movie. And we're coming up on, I think, 50 years of this book. And I was saying before we went on air, I was lucky once I found a paperback copy. You can't see it. I don't know if you can see this. It's being held together by a rubber band. I actually have, it's a first edition from like 1972, a first edition paperback. And it has this nice little inscription inside. And it says, "We envy you the experience of reading this book for the first time from the editors." So it was very cool. It had been years, of course, after the movie had been released, but I found this copy and I'm like, wow, look at that. Picked it up for like a quarter and went home and proceeded to lay on the couch and read it in like 2 hours. It's one of those really quick, just goes right through. And it's a fantastic read. So, obviously if you have the opportunity, I would suggest, if you can get your hands on it, even if it's Kindle, because Kindle's cheaper and, cheaper is cheaper. And you're still reading it. Get a chance to read this. It's a fantastic story. It's based on this movie is based on the novel by David Morrell, who's a famous mystery thriller writer. And for a long time, I had no idea that he was the author of this book. Really, really solid stuff. But the script, I think, was co-written by Stallone. And this was one of those movies I think they had been trying to make. I think, since like 72 or 75.
Oh, wow.
So many different potential directors they had lined up. So many different potential actors to play Rambo, to play Troutman, to play Teasel. I think originally the idea was for a director named Richard Brooks, who was like the director of like that old 70 movie, Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Yeah. He was going to direct. He was the first potential director for First Blood, and it was going to have this ending where Teasel is much more sympathetic to Rambo, and orders him to put his hands up after they surround him essentially, and instead of trying to kill him, he orders him to put his hands up, and an unknown assailant, somebody in the crowd, fires a shot and kills him. Like, you never find out who kills Rambo, just somebody in the mob. Fires this shot at him, and he dies. So that was the original screenplay idea back in the 70s for how the story would kind of end. I find that to be somewhat acceptable because it is a very sad story. It's a sort of a, there's no happy ending with this.
Right. I wouldn't have been against Rambo dying because, if you've seen the original ending, Troutman takes him out.
Yeah.
And there's been other endings, thought of Rambo dying. Like, I read Kirk Douglas was originally going to be Troutman.
There were so many different people.
Yeah. He quit after a day because they rejected his idea of him killing Rambo. And I'm not against Troutman taking him out.
No.
But the fact that it was just like a random mystery assailant, I don't think I would have been happy with that ending.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking back on it with like 40 years experience, and it was sort of dissatisfying, the whole thing that happens to him. I mean, the whole story of John Rambo in this movie is especially tragic. But just to get back for a second, something what we were talking about, they were looking at Clint Eastwood to play Rambo. I don't see it. Although he did do a fantastic military movie called Heartbreak Ridge, but it was more like an action comedy. He's like a gunnery sergeant, Vietnam vet Marine, and he has that hard, grizzled kind of look to him, where he played kind of a killer in peacetime, and so he has to shape up these young guys now that are just kind of clowns in the 80s, when he's come out of Korea and Vietnam. So he was just like tough as nails. They were looking at Robert De Niro. I don't see that working at all. Other directors, though, I mean, they had Sidney Pollack, Mike Nichols, John Frankenheimer as potential directors. Frankenheimer with that whole Manchurian Candidate, that's a little too weird for me.
Or Island of Dr. Moreau,
Oh, was that Frankenheimer, the one with Michael York?
He did the one with Val Kilmer and Brando.
That is just hell, man. That is just hell. They were looking at Lee Marvin as Teasel. They were looking at Burt Lancaster as Teasel. I would watch Burt Lancaster play this water bottle.
Yeah,
I would. He's that good for me. They had Robert Mitchum as Teasel, Robert Duvall potentially as Teasel, which
maybe.
I could see Robert Duvall if he's playing the more sympathetic, sort of version, which he kind of was in the novel, kind of, sort of, because he was a veteran too, and I can't remember if he was a World War II veteran or a Korea veteran.
I think I read that's kind of the reason why he's upset or he dislikes Rambo in the novels, because he's a Korean War vet and he's kind of jealous that I don't know if jealous is the right word, but all the Vietnam vets got all the notoriety and I don't want to say fame, and he felt like the Korean War vets were kind of forgotten about.
Yeah, which, I mean, it literally is called the Forgotten War. And he doesn't necessarily have all that much sympathy. I think, or empathy even.
Right.
I think Troutman does instill a little bit of that to him by fleshing it out. But initially in the book, he doesn't like Troutman either. He can't stand him.
Okay.
Because as much as Rambo's kind of the alpha over everybody, Troutman's the alpha over like the civilian world as well. And by the time he's landed, he already knows like a debrief on like everybody. And like, I guess as a police officer and a sheriff and a veteran, he doesn't like, somebody playing like those particular trump cards with him.
Right.
They were looking at Paul Newman as Rambo, which I don't see that at all. Steve McQueen.
Really?
Yeah, Steve McQueen, but they said McQueen was too old to play somebody in 1980, or maybe it was in 70s. Maybe this was back in the 70s. I think it was 75 or something like that.
Stallone was already at least 30 by now, I think, wasn't he?
Are we talking 1982?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, easily 30, probably close to 40. I mean,
right.
Yeah, or mid to early, mid 30s or something like that. Al Pacino.
I read that one. I just shook my head. I'm like, I can't.
Unless he's going to yell all the deputies into submission. I mean,
I know. I don't. He's way too crazy and over the top. No matter how you think, there's no way he could have been. I don't think a good Rambo.
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed when I first saw him in Michael Mann's Heat, playing an action role. But on the other hand, he has very little action in it. There's the one shootout scene. But basically, I mean, he's a fantastic actor, but it has, for this sort of role, I don't see it. And then I think last but certainly not least, they were looking at John Travolta.
Oh, no.
No, that would be terrible.
No.
Now, for Troutman, they were looking at George C. Scott, which, I mean, George C. Scott, I could see him doing just about anything, although maybe he was a little old by then, but not quite. Right. James Mason, Richard Jacob, Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas is Troutman. Maybe a little, I'm not Gene Hackman. Charles Durning is Teasel. I mean, they've been trying to get this into production since it took about 10, 12 years. They were trying to get this movie into production, and finally, once Stallone signed on, they brought back, I think, Ted Kotcheff. Who ended up being the director, and they hit it out of the park,
big time.
They hit it out of the park.
This was the first time. I mean, I've seen it, a handful of times, but this was probably the first time I've watched this in probably a good 10 years.
Yeah,
and I didn't realize how good it is from beginning to end, and not just the action or the acting, just the way it's filmed, the cinematography. When you're in the forest, you feel the mist from like the rivers and stuff like that, and you can feel cold just by looking at the way Rambo, he's covering himself up with that. It's not a piece of tarp, but whatever, a piece of carpet or whatever that he finds on the ground, and just the way it's shot is fantastic too.
Yeah, and you can feel the desperation.
Yes,
from everybody, especially from him, because it's such a miserable story. It starts out where, this is probably the only smile that's cracked in the entirety of the movie. And it starts out on sort of a hopeful note. And that, he's this sort of soft-spoken Vietnam vet who travels, I don't know if it's a village or just these houses by a lake, a town or something like that, to see his Vietnam buddy. And immediately, you can tell he's looking forward to see him, only to find out that, the guy has died from Agent Orange, and that he had missed him by a full year.
Yeah, and that conversation is bad is when the lady he's talking to, she sends the kid inside.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to be good. And like you said, he's all happy-go-lucky. He's going to see his buddy, and then he gets the bad news.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could see how angry she is.
Yeah.
She's angry and upset at the situation. Because you get the impression, I mean, it's a poor place that he went to visit, but it was beautiful. It was a nice lake and it was fresh air, and, probably looked like he was around some mountains or something along those lines, and so on and so forth. A place where, maybe he could have found a little bit of peace, but immediately that just gets shut down on him.
Yep.
And he goes back, and you could see, he's just on the highway by himself, walking along, the walkways or the, pullover sections. And, you can see the cold shooting out of his mouth, and he's wrapping himself up in his army jacket and everything like that. And then it just all goes to shit the minute he hits that town.
Yep.
It's just, the police in this and in the book as well are portrayed as just awful.
Yeah, and I forgot that Brian Dennehy, he's an instigator. He's kind of a dick in this, but he's not the worst cop in my opinion at all. He's not the worst cop at all. It's Art. I can't think of his last name, but the guy
Art
with the mustache.
Yeah. Art Galt. Art Galt is one of the sheriff's deputies, and I don't know if you knew this. Brian Dennehy, of course, the great Brian Dennehy, he just passed away last year.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away I forget, he was in his 80s or something like that. And I never forget because I follow Stallone on IG. And he posted about that, and he was saying that Brian Dennehy was a Vietnam veteran.
I didn't know that.
And had worked with him as an advisor in First Blood, and kind of offered direction and suggestions about how Stallone might want to play it. I don't think he was a special forces, soldier or anything like that, but he was there in Vietnam and probably had a bit of a attunement to, what life would have been like, returning as a civilian now, in a sort of strange world. But yeah, the police, Brian Dennehy is kind of a bully. He tries to bully him. He's just asking, hey, can I get something to eat? And, I guess I didn't think this at the time because I was much younger when I saw this. But, he tells him there's a diner 30 miles down the road, and he's on foot.
Yeah.
That's like a whole day's walk.
Exactly. And that's what, like I said, I was watching this with my wife, and she's just like, why is he being just such an asshole?
Yeah.
What did Rambo do wrong? He's just one of those, people. He's like, I don't want bums in my town.
Yeah.
And he thinks that Rambo is going to cause trouble just because he's a drifter.
Yeah, and I think he sees him with the long hair, and he's got the army jacket, and he thinks he's probably some sort of beatnik.
Yeah, because he mentions that. He says there's a line like, you walk around with the flag on that type of jacket, it's going to cause trouble or something like that.
Yeah, he completely underestimates him. I don't even think he really sees him.
Right.
Before you know it, he drops him off at the town limit. And I guess with everything that's been going on, Rambo's just had enough, and he just decides to march back into the town. And it's a losing battle from the get-go.
I love that's I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's a fantastic shot of Rambo all the way down at the end of the bridge, and then he's driving away, and you just slowly see Rambo turning around and walking back to town. It's like the perfect FU. To Dennehy, you know what I mean? And I love it.
Now, in the book, some weird Teasel doesn't arrest him immediately. What ends up happening is that he drops him off at the town limit, and Rambo finagles his way through the woods and just keeps showing up in town again. And Teasel can't figure out how the hell he keeps doing it. By the time he gets back to the town, Rambo's back there in the center of town because he's completely familiar with how to work through woods and jungle and all this sort of stuff. And he's just taking these major shortcuts. And I think he ends up doing it to him 3 times.
That's fantastic.
And, he's kind of heckling him. He's just kind of making fun of him at first, even though, like we said at the beginning of the, before we went on, by the time he shows up in that town in the book, he's already killed 2 people. He's much more bloody.
Now, is Rambo supposed to be a lot younger in the book too? I heard.
Yeah, because it happens. I think this copyright is 1972.
Okay,
so he's a kid. He's not, some muscular Stallone kind of guy. He's some skinny blonde kid, and the sheriff completely underestimates him because Stallone is a man. Clearly at this point in 1982, but the person who shows up 10 years before that is probably 22, 23 or something like that.
That's when that was when my dad came home from Vietnam. Okay. He was there from 70 to 72, and he went to boot camp at 17. So it was around the age of Rambo in the book when he got home too. So makes perfect sense. You'd underestimate a kid.
Yeah, and you've got a sheriff who's 20 years older, and is a Korea vet himself, and just think that some punk kid is over here trying to cause trouble or poke fun at the cops, this kind of thing. And so once he gets arrested, you're much more plugged into Rambo's dialogue, where he realizes that he's going further and further, but he sort of gets wrapped up in this power struggle. And he keeps telling himself, like, because he doesn't say anything really, and you're privy to his inner monologue, and he's like, I could just start talking and get myself out of this. Like, I know how to talk, but at the same time, he's also someone who's severely PTSD'd.
Right.
So he's having this struggle within himself. If I start talking, I could probably get my way out of this. I could explain I'm a Vietnam veteran. I can explain I'm a Green Beret, these sorts of things. I could give them my name. Like, he doesn't do any of those things, just like in the movie, but he's much more tweaked. And so, of course, the arrest doesn't go well. It's just
I love the whole scene in the jail, like even before he goes crazy. I don't mean to use that term, derogatory or anything, but before he loses it and he's throwing people through the windows and stuff like that. And I'm not talking about the when they hose him down or anything like that or beat him with the nightstick. My favorite scene is just how Rambo totally shows he doesn't give any fucks, is the fingerprint scene.
Yeah.
Because there's no dialogue at all from Rambo. He's just, it's just the cop arguing, put your thumb here, you got to do it this way. And after he yanks his hand away, he doesn't look at anybody. He literally just grabs a napkin and starts wiping his fingertips off. Doesn't say a damn word to anybody, but he's just like, just showing his, I don't know if dominance is the right word, or just the fact that, they're not going to break him.
It's just, I would argue it's just non-compliance.
Yeah.
It's just complete non-compliance with anything that they're asking him to do. He's not giving name. He's not giving, address, any information. He's not allowing them to fingerprint him. I mean, he's just completely, sort of passively resisting like everything that they're trying to do. And unfortunately, it just continues to aggravate everybody, especially people coming from, I think, what is probably a small town where they're not used to that sort of, pushback.
Yeah.
Which leads to just, physical abuse. You start to meet, Galt, the deputy, who's just, he just wants to beat somebody. It really does portray the police in an awful light. They're hosing him down with.
Then they're laughing. They're laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, the only person in that shows an inkling of compassion is David Caruso, who's the punk deputy that the other deputies they make complete fun of. He's the only person in there who's trying to explain that there's something wrong with this guy. Like, where he takes his shirt off and he's just got those cut marks and scars all up and down, like his back and his chest. And he's like, what the hell is going on with this guy? Nobody else gives a shit.
Nope. Because that's right then. That's when he gets beat with the baton and goes down.
Yeah. And then it really does all start to go bad. I guess it finally culminates where they try to dry shave him with a straight razor, which causes him to completely explode because he flashes back to being tortured.
Yep.
As a prisoner of war, and then from there it just goes straight to hell.
Oh my God. I didn't realize how long this escape sequence really was.
Yeah.
Until I rewatched it. I just finished it. Let's see, we've been talking about 25 minutes now. I just finished the movie maybe an hour ago.
Okay.
I watched half last night, half when I got home from work. And when I was watching last night, I'm like, holy shit, this action sequence from when he breaks away from the cops, while they're going to shave him, to when he finally fully escapes into the forest has got to be a good 5, almost 10 minutes nonstop.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's at that point that things really get away from the cops.
Mm-hmm.
Like any chance they had of ending this, in a good way, any chance they had in coming out on top. Because once he just snaps that way, and I was saying this earlier, he's like a rattlesnake.
Yep.
He's snapping at everybody. And in the book, there's a helicopter crash, but it's not with Art Galt. He disembowels Art Galt with the straight razor.
Ooh.
Yeah, he just slashes at his belly with that straight razor. It just completely disembowels him in the bottom of the police station. He kills all those deputies between escaping and the wood scene where that was just one of the worst beatdowns I've ever seen people take. And, it's almost worse in the movie that he doesn't kill those people because he just makes them look foolish.
Yep.
He just takes them apart in like 5 minutes.
And there's one that he broke one's nose, so you always see him walking around with the bandage and stuff like that. And he's tossing them through windows like they're nothing.
Yeah.
This is another day in the park for Rambo.
Yeah, when he gets out there in the woods, I think he stabs and that. I mean, I didn't bring this brings into play, of course, one of the most famous weapons in all of movies, I think, action movies, the Rambo knife.
Yep.
That huge ass Bowie knife. I mean, and he had everything. He had a compass in that knife. He had a suture kit.
Yep.
He had some matches, dry matches, wooden matches. It looks like. That was a hell of a weapon that he had. And essentially, he took everybody apart. Well, he did get a weapon. He did get a gun at this point. But essentially, he takes apart all those deputies basically with just that knife and a couple of bullets.
Yep.
He stabs David Caruso in the hamstring. We've got booby traps. He's jumping off the top of a tree. That scene where he jumps on that one deputy from the top of the tree and he just dislocates or breaks his shoulder. And you're like, holy shit. It's just, he just goes through them like a hot knife through butter. And finally, with the culminating scene where he corners Brian Dennehy after he's taken apart all of his deputies and they're all just screaming for help. It's fantastic. I mean, to this day, like I said, just watching it today, I was more amazed probably today than I was maybe when I first saw it, which is really kind of saying something for a 40-year-old action movie.
And I'll say this, Stallone, I think Stallone gets a bad rap at times because, he's always parodied for his little bit of a slur he has and his thick accent.
Yeah.
You know what I think is great about his performance in this? It's his body language. It's his eyes. Because he doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this movie until his final speech with Troutman about what happened with his friends in Nam.
Right.
And he's so subtle sometimes. Like when he's just driving, he takes that army vehicle towards the end of the movie, and it's just focusing on his eyes. He could do like air quotes the crazy eyes, you know what I mean? And he does it. It's just focus.
Yeah,
he's got his target, and he's looking left and right, and then he's back to being focused. And that's what I think is great. Is a lot of this is, again, we'll just go back to the fingerprint scene. It's just all body language, and Stallone shows how good he can be.
Yeah.
And I think his performance here, it does get a little over the top as the sequels went, but those movies became more and more over the top as they went along as well. I think this is a perfect, I don't know if I would say subdued performance of Stallone, because it's very low-key, but it's very powerful at the same time, if that makes sense.
I don't speak from experience, but it seems like an accurate representation of what one man like that could probably do to a completely amateurish, clownish police department.
Yeah, they're not prepared for this. No. They have no idea who it was until they hear, oh, it's John Rambo. I've heard of that guy. And that's when they really start, shaking in their boots. They know he's a Green Beret and the stuff that those guys can do.
Yeah, and what ends up happening, they still... He really doesn't, they just continue to chase him. For a while, he just continues to run. But then they get him to the point where he runs to that cliff, remember?
Oh, God, yes.
he's got nowhere to go. And so
Mhm.
when they finally force him to turn and fight, that's when he just starts decimating people.
Yep.
Because up until then, he's just been on the run, and that's Troutman's suggestion, that you just let him go.
Let him go. You'll catch him in 2 weeks.
Yep, just create a small hole. He's going to find it, and then just let him go. And it's the one thing they won't do.
Right.
It's the one thing they won't do. Now,
neither Gall or Dennehy will. And the thing is, what I like is how different Dennehy and Gall are, because Gall just wants to kill the guy. He doesn't care. Dennehy wants to bring him in, but like I love how Gall, he shoots at him right after Rambo leaves the police station. Dennehy's like, he pulls the rifle. He's like, there's people out there. What the fuck are you thinking?
Yeah, he's firing into a neighborhood, into a crowd.
Mm-hmm. And Dennehy he keeps yelling at him like from the helicopter and stuff like that. He still wants to capture this guy by the book, and he just doesn't give two shits. He wants to take him out.
Yeah, he's
sadistic.
It's not a good portrayal, I said, of police in general, and the National Guard aren't much better.
Oh, they're dorks in this.
Yeah, they're just buffoons.
Yep,
they're buffoons. Now, of course, you've got the National Guard from 1982,
right?
As opposed to the National Guard from now. A vast majority of them, I think, are foreign combat vets, and probably highly intelligent people, but they're almost lampooned here. Like the one guy who's like who's the head of the National Guard, he has to like work at the drugstore the next day at the pharmacy.
Yeah, they blow up the cave, and how are we going to dig him out? You can't get a forklift or whatever he says up here, and he's like, well, dig him out. He's like, I got to be at the pharmacy tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's.
I think it was their attempt at comic relief. Because this movie is boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And I just think they're a little too buffoonish, if that makes sense. Because you have the one guy saying, no, I'm not going in there. I didn't sign up for this. You go in there. No, you go in there. No, you go in there.
Yeah. Or when he jumps in the truck and pulls it, suddenly he's just got that big Bowie knife in the guy's face.
Yep.
And he's like, he opens the door and he's like, go on, get out of here. And the guy's like, I got no problem with you. And he just looks at him. He's like, what are you talking about? Get out of here. And he just shoves him out the door. It's like dealing with an annoying little brother or something. Like, he doesn't want to hurt that guy. It's just get out of here. And
then we'll go back to how good I think Stallone is this was, I thought, perfect levity, for use of comedy, because when he sneaks into, to get that soldier before he kicks him out, he says, pay attention to the road. That's how accidents happen. As he's holding a knife to his throat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know that there are too many scripts, and Stallone co-wrote this script, and pared it down from, what David Morrell wrote, because this could just have been a bloodthirsty, Rambo's kind of a villain person, because essentially that's what happens in the book. I mean, he kills all those deputies, and Teasel barely makes it out alive. He barely makes it out of that wooded scene alive. Like, he actually escapes, but by like the skin of his teeth. And you don't get too many scripts that have been this good for Stallone movies. A lot of times, like you said, the action is a little over the top. Now, I've enjoyed all of the Rambo movies. I haven't watched that second one in a long time, where he goes back to Vietnam. That was a bit much. But I enjoyed that one where he was in Burma.
Oh,
it's just called Rambo.
Yeah, that's the fourth one. I have a hard time picking like a top 2 or 3, because there's not a Rambo movie I don't enjoy, but I enjoy every movie for its own specific reasons.
Okay.
If I want a really well-made movie, I go with First Blood. Sometimes I just want shit blowing up and people dying. That's where I go with, number 4.
Really? Okay.
Just because of that whole like last 25 minutes of just blood guts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where he's got that 50 caliber.
Jeez.
And he just shoots the guy in the driver's seat.
And it's just chunks of meat and everything. It's just insane. Sometimes I went over the top insane. And again, how crazy do I want my Rambo? Do I want him like in First Blood, or do I want him totally nuts like Part 4? or do I want him semi air quotes back to normal in Last Blood, which I think is very underrated from what
Yeah,
a lot of people say.
I saw that recently, within the past couple of weeks, and I had seen that. I was overseas at the time, and I saw it it's called 4DX. Do you know what that is? 4DX is when you go to a movie theater and like there's a scene where you excuse me, there's you sit in the theater, and depending on what the scene is, there's a scene where he saves people from a flood in the beginning of the movie. You see that part? Well, like actual mist starts coming out of like these things along the side, and it gets like freezing cold. Or
that
if
would
he's
be
like,
fun.
or if he's like in the truck trying to get that girl back to the United States, like the chairs just kind of jostle around like you're in the damn ride.
We have a theater like that about an hour away because one of my coworkers, perfect movie I think to see. He saw like Expendables 2 in that type of the theater, and he said it was just the chairs just didn't stop moving. He said it was like a roller coaster. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Well, I saw Last Blood like that, but that was in the theaters, and it was a little distracting after a while, actually.
I bet. I could see that.
But then recently I just saw it, and it was one of those late nights where I couldn't sleep, and I was like, you know what? I see Rambo's on Amazon or something like that, and I'm going to watch it. It was still a good movie, and that is the last one. That is my understanding.
To my knowledge, yeah. I thought it. I mean, there's really not much he can do.
No,
you know, he's getting up there, but if that is the last one, I think it ended perfectly.
Yeah,
I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but just the last shot we see of Rambo, I think, is a perfect way to end it.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. Now, this is, I mean, ironically, I'm not old enough for Apocalypse Now to have seen that in the theater or anything. So this was kind of my first exposure to Vietnam movies, I mean, this isn't a Vietnam movie per se, but about a Vietnam vet. And watching this again today, you know, the real problem, especially in the last scene where he's talking to Troutman, is that essentially he's been home for 5 or 7 or however many years since the wars ended, and he can't function in society. He's so badly traumatized, especially by the one death of his friend that he talks about at the end. And it's just, it sounds so awful. You know, I mean, I think it's an like you said, it's an undervalued performance from Stallone in this. And any of those people that we were talking about earlier, I don't see them necessarily doing as good a job.
Oh God! Could you imagine Al Pacino trying to do that?
No.
Good God, no.
I don't see them giving also what I was talking about, which is the physical. What we had both been talking about, which is the physical performance. They don't necessarily have the physicality or the presence. Other people playing Teasel or Troutman, okay, I can sort of see that. But I really do believe that just like Rocky Balboa, this was a role that was made for Sylvester Stallone. This, and he certainly has over the course of 40 plus, almost 40 years now, made this his own movie. But it is, I mean, at the end of the day, a story about a badly PTSD veteran who's just bullied and ends up. He turns out to be an extraordinarily dangerous man who just explodes, and he essentially at the end just rains fire on that whole town. And he basically almost burns the whole damn town to the ground before Troutman's able to rein him in. I mean, that was really something when I saw that today. Where he blows up the gas station and then the gun shop, and then he shoots up the department stores, and then he sort of shoots the shit out of that police station. And I mean, it's just. You're like, wow, this guy is just wrecking.
He's so everything. Unhinged.
Yeah. Because these people have wronged him in a very bad way. And so, I mean, by the time we get to the second movie, it picks up and he's in prison. But you get the impression that probably a lot of what was done to him wasn't, may have been swept under or whatever.
Well, the thing is, like during that whole monologue or that speech that he's given Troutman, like we don't know what's happened to him since he's gotten home either, because there's those lines he says. He's like, they spit on us, they call us names, and all this stuff. He's like, I can't even get a job at a car wash or something like that. So who knows what he's gone through from coming home to the beginning of First Blood as well. So this could have been the
straw that breaks the camel's back. You do get the impression that this attempt to see his friend at the beginning of the movie is kind of his last straw.
Yeah. He's got nothing left now.
Yeah, he's got nothing. He's got no one. He talks about how he's been trying to get a hold of the colonel for a while. He's been reaching out to people, and there's just been no one to talk. And he says it. I don't talk to anybody. Sometimes for a day, sometimes for a week. He's a severely unbalanced person, and it's a very tragic story about someone who was probably in his particular arena, probably the very top of the food chain.
Yeah.
But now he's come home to his own country and he can't.
Yeah.
He can't function.
A lot of people because like I said before, it's unfair to Stallone because he's a parody a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people who have only known him from like the goofy shit and all that stuff, and it's sad because a lot of people don't take that final speech to Troutman seriously.
Yeah.
And I think, my wife has a hard time understanding him because of the accent and the lisp and everything. So we had it on subtitles.
Yeah.
And when she heard that story about his friend in Vietnam being blown up with the shoe shine box, and they just wanted to go drive the car, and he's like, how can I do that? I can't find your legs. And you know what? It sounds goofy with me saying that, they can't drive the car because he can't find his buddy's legs. But you watch Stallone's performance. Yeah. It's heart-wrenching. It really is. Awful.
And pieces of his friend are all over him.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's like, my friend's all over me and this and that. His guts are hanging. I'm trying to put him in. And it just, it's heartbreaking. It really, really is.
It's really awful. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, what Morrell does in the book is, the Troutman character is not a sympathetic character.
Okay.
He's a cold-blooded killer. And essentially he views Rambo as a broken down piece of the machine. And he will not allow the machine to break down.
Gotcha.
So he ends up killing him. Mm-hmm. He ends up killing him in the end. Yeah, Troutman is not someone who's empathetic, and they're not all that close. Which is, kind of not worth getting into, but he does know him from the war. But yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a story. It's a hell of a story, and probably, I mean, among many, I think it got mixed reviews at the time. Mm-hmm. And because like you said, it's easy to lampoon Stallone. He's coming off, 2 Rocky movies. And so he's there, yo, Adrian, this kind of stuff. And now he's got this new thing where he's like taking out the police and the National Guard. And I could see where you could easily just, sort of want to poke fun at it.
Right.
That kind of thing. But it's, they said, now, after a certain number of years, people are looking at it again. And, it was a box office smash and, more critical reception. Is coming its way. It's getting like a second or third wind, especially now that we're 4 or 5 movies into a series.
And I think I don't know if we said it at the beginning of the recording or if we said it before the recording. If you just know the character, air quotes, the character of Rambo, how he's always blowing shit up and killing all these people, and then you watch this movie, there's only one death in the entire film. Yeah. And it's accidental or in self-defense. Yeah. So because me, the first movie I saw, obviously as a kid of the 80s, I was at that age. I saw part 2, so I'm already getting into the over-the-top stuff. Yeah. And then I see 3, and then I finally see First Blood. I'm like, holy shit, this isn't just a different movie. This is a different character. Yeah. And as I got older, I grew to enjoy this film a hell of a lot more. Yeah, because again, of Stallone's, all the performances are great. Yeah, but like I said, just the low key performance of Stallone for like the first 90% of him being in this movie, and then
Yeah.
the intensity of his last speech to Troutman.
It's
great.
It's only a 90-minute movie.
Right. And the pace.
Yeah.
Is so good.
Now, supposedly there's a cutout there that, and Stallone said it literally made him physically sick. He said it's over 3 hours long.
I read that. I read there was a rumor he tried to buy the original print so he could destroy it because he was so disappointed in it. I'm glad he didn't.
I wouldn't mind seeing it.
I'd be interested because I have the DVD and there's only one deleted scene, and it's the original ending where Troutman
shoots him. Yeah. There's I think he is. I think it's finished. He's redoing Rocky IV.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be just called Rocky versus Drago. He's doing some sort of director's cut or something like that.
I follow him on Instagram too, and he's occasionally like showing updates and stuff. Some of the new stuff looks really good, dude.
Yeah, I got no problem watching Stallone. Yep. I mean, it's a new generation of action stars these days. Mm-hmm. I mean, even Robert Pattinson is getting on the action, with Tenet. And, he's going to be doing the Batman. And so, it's the era of Jason Momoa and, these DC and Marvel people, so on and so forth. But, yeah, I mean, I got nothing against watching Stallone.
And one that we didn't bring it up, like the stunts in this movie are insane.
Yeah.
Just him on the motorcycle and all the times, the cop cars are falling down and everything. And then, of course, that one scene where he jumps off the cliff into the trees.
Yeah.
And I've read that it's really Stallone falling through the trees. And when he hits that branch and he, oh, Jesus, like that's a real take because I guess he really like broke or cracked a rib when he hit that branch.
Yeah.
And
I read the same thing.
They kept that take in it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Al Pacino ain't doing that.
No, and nor should he. I don't want to see Al Pacino jump off a cliff. I mean, there's only so much I can take.
Right.
There's one movie, and I'm sure you've seen it, but it sort of is a parallel to this movie called The Hunted. And it's with Benicio del Toro and Tommy Lee Jones.
I've seen it a couple of times. It's been years, but I remember really enjoying it.
Yeah, and it's a similar kind of movie where this, sort of special forces veteran has kind of gone off the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
Except he's a little more almost towards the delusional end of things.
Right.
He's so badly PTSD from what he sees in Kosovo, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy Lee Jones is kind of his old mentor.
Right.
During the military, and they actually bring him in to help hunt him down, and that's a William Friedkin movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a William Friedkin movie, and I'm a huge William Friedkin fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. But I remember when I first saw that, I was like, wow, this is like First Blood.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of this First Blood story. So now I'm kind of in the mood to watch The Hunted again.
Like I said, it's been decades since I've seen it. I'm going to add it to the queue tonight.
Yeah. I actually might pop it in after this is over with or something while I sprawl on the couch, and just kind of chill.
Benicio's always fun, no matter what he's in. Now, even if the movie isn't good, he's always good.
Oh, yeah. I always enjoy Benicio del Toro. Now, unfortunately, tomorrow I've got it is unfortunate because, I'm doing the Something Shitty kind of sub-thread. And what I find that's common in many of those movies is that you want to like them.
Yeah.
You don't want to watch a bad movie or a movie that you don't enjoy. You don't want, something to go off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
But tomorrow's is going to be The Wolfman.
Oh, shit. I figured when you said Del Toro.
Yeah. Now, again, it's like Stoker's Dracula. I own it on Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
I own this movie. I own the director's cut and unrated directors. Because I'm constantly looking for, this is going to be the time that I watch it, and I'm going to like it. This is it. I did the same thing with Stoker's Dracula forever. Yeah. This is the time. I'm going to find what the piece is that, I'm going to say that this is a good movie, and by the time I get through halfway, I'm just like, no. Okay.
I'm not going to, I won't spoil anything, and I'll leave all the all the bullshitting for you for tomorrow night. But all I remember is CGI werewolves jumping around, and I'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and
I'll
it's
leave the
just
rest for you, bud.
and you very much. I mean, because the werewolf is my favorite monster movie
Mm-hmm.
monster. The werewolf is my favorite movie monster, and so when you hear about Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins doing a werewolf movie together, you're like,
That's a
oh,
fantastic idea.
yeah. I mean, you got Emily Blunt. I mean, obviously, he and Emily Blunt got together several years later for Sicario, so
Mm-hmm.
obviously they know how to work well together. But yeah, the script's not very good. It's not a good story. They brought this one director in. Was it Joe Johnston? Joe Johnston is the director of Captain America: The First Avenger.
Okay, I was gonna say I know the name.
He's the director of one of my favorite movies, Hidalgo. That one about
It's the one with Vigo.
Yeah, it was Vigo. I love that movie. I love Hidalgo. So Joe Johnston has some really decent credits for my personal tastes. But apparently it was one of those things where they kicked somebody loose and they brought him in and like, we need you to finish this movie in 80 days. You know, like the Suits. The Suits stepped in and said, we need you to finish this movie in 80 days. And they bring in Rick Baker, but then they go with CGI.
Then what's the point?
You know, why would you have Rick Baker there at all? That's like an insult to his intelligence.
Especially after he's already done werewolf movies, you know, American Werewolf in London. So you know he knows his shit, so why would you do CGI?
Not to mention, Anthony Hopkins is too damn old at this point.
Yeah.
He's like 73 years old by the time they come out with the Wolfman, and you're just like, I think it was, and I'm not necessarily a fan, but Bill Maher was talking about it at one point, I think when the movie came out, and he's like, Anthony Hopkins is too old to be in horror movies. He's like, if you can take 2 steps at a time, you can just outrun him at this point, you know? And you're just like,
yeah.
You've seen the Universal Wolfman, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. It would have been much better, I think, if Hopkins had played the Claude Rains character, like the stoic, stiff upper lip Englishman who refused to believe and thought that his son was just a fucking Looney Tune.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a much better use of Anthony Hopkins' talents than making him be the werewolf. And you're just like, oh God. Okay.
Yeah, those are Suits for you.
Yeah, and you know, and well, I mean, they've given me an episode, but I'm not really pleased about it. So, I think that this is a good place to wrap it up, unless there was something you wanted to add.
The only other thing I can think of that I think is really good that helps me think of how tragic the Rambo character is the score.
Yeah,
you know, it's a really sad score when you just see him. I mean, it also makes me think of, you know, the lonely man walking, you know, from like Incredible Hulk, but it's like when he's walking away, you know, walking by himself, it's just, it really, I don't want to say pathetic. That's the wrong word, but it really makes you feel for how sad of a character John Rambo is, even before all this shit happens.
It's tragic.
Yes.
It's tragic. And I mean, you know, it was a full tragedy in the book because in the end, of course, in the tragedy, the main character dies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here, you know, I mean, it's not really a satisfying ending. You know, he's going to prison.
Right.
And he hasn't really done anything wrong. But you get the sense that maybe he's going to get the help that he needs.
Right.
You know, because he desperately needs help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he needs some sort of intervention, and the one person probably on earth that he still trusts is there with him, you know, to make sure that he gets what he needs and is in a position to do so.
Right.
So it's a bittersweet ending.
Yeah, there is that hope that he will get the help.
Yeah, you know, and I would have been okay if they had ended it here. I'm kind of glad they didn't.
Yeah, me too.
You know, because there was a lot of fun to be had in the theaters, you know, and like I said, even I went to the theaters to see Last Blood. So, you know, I've been following this character my whole life.
I'll say this. I went to see Rambo, just Rambo, so part 4, the Burma one.
Yeah.
And that was the first one I saw in the theaters. I think it's the only one I've seen.
Okay.
And I went with my buddy, and we have like this strict rule. No talking, no matter what. We don't get up to use the bathroom. We sit there for our 90 minutes, 2 hours, and we're just focused. And he's also very I don't want to say sheltered, but he's also very, he doesn't like to make a scene. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to be the center of attention.
Okay.
In that part in Rambo 4, where he takes that fucking machete and he just lops that dude's head off, my friend got out of his chair and raised his hands and cheered because of how much fun we were already having with this movie. And it just went on from there. So I am glad it continued, because 4 is, and it sounds bad saying how much fun I have with 4 because how everyone's just destroyed.
I loved it. I think it's my second favorite movie in the series.
Yeah.
Because the people are just so evil.
Yes.
The people are just so, I mean, they're just flat characters, cardboard cutouts, caricatures. They're evil as fuck, and it works.
Yep.
It works. It completely works. And he makes that huge machete when that guy from the ministry comes. He's like, hold on a second. As soon as I make this machete, I'll be ready to go. And he has some other soldiers there backing him up. Yep. I mean, and and the naivete of those missionaries going into that country, they're just so stupid. It's just
we're gonna change the world. Fuck the world.
Yeah, exactly. When he kills all the people on that boat, remember when he's first trying to take him over, and the pirates, and
then one of the missionaries scolds him.
Yeah.
He's like, no, they would have raped her 7 times, since Sunday. I did you guys a favor. I saved her.
He has to jack that one dude. He finally just had enough of listening to this guy's blather.
Mm-hmm.
So for 40 years, I mean, almost, they've been entertaining us. So, I got no complaints.
The character's part of Americana. There's Rocky and there's Rambo. He's got 2 major characters. That are still going. Yeah, well, I think he's done with Last Blood, and I think Creed 2, he was officially done with playing Rocky. But
they're not going to be any more Rocky movies. Yeah, that's my understanding. But I mean, that last Creed movie was worthwhile.
I thought it was great.
It was exactly what it was supposed to be. It had that Rocky feel to it.
Yeah.
It was good to see, the old favorites, Dolph Lundgren and, Bridget Nielsen. And, she even came back for 5 minutes.
That was still cool, especially if you know that she's the ex-wife of Stallone, and it was a messy divorce. Yeah. But she still showed up.
Yeah.
So it was cool.
Yeah. It's good stuff. He's definitely carved his place.
Mm-hmm. Well deserved.
Well deserved. Yeah. That Rocky movie, I think, was his baby. And I think he walked around with that script for like years. And wouldn't let anybody like come near it, or nobody else was going to star in that movie. That was his thing.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. All right, dude, it's good to see you again.
This was fun. It's a blast as always, dude.
Yeah, same.
I love shooting the shit.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're going to have to set up some more shows down the road or something. We'll have to get in and figure something else out, but sooner rather than later. That would be
absolutely
cool. And thank you for showing up here again today to talk a little First Blood, a little outside the realm of what the show normally covers. But I mean, why would you not want to talk about this one?
Hey, you know what? I always feel, I'm always appreciative of other YouTube channels or podcasts coming my way, because that makes me feel like, okay, I was on your show once, but now this is my 3rd time. I'm like, so you know what? I think he likes what I have to say about film. So it feels good that I'm a frequent guest, and I always look forward to coming back, bud.
Hey man, appreciate having you on, and I've always appreciated that you stop into the comments, just to say hey. Except for that one time you heckled me about Big Trouble in Little China or whatever, or Starman.
You guys were talking. I think you're talking Prince of Darkness, and I was like, what? No love for Starman?
No love for Starman. No love for. Now that you're here, let me tell you. There's no love for that one.
Like I said, sometimes I can bullshit, and sometimes I can be one of them old men from the Muppet Show up in the balcony just giving you shit. So it's all good fun, though.
Indeed. All right, we will be back tomorrow with a new episode of Something Shitty This Way Comes, covering Joe Johnston's The Wolfman from 11 years ago, for fuck's sake.
Godspeed, brother.
Yeah. Stick around after the outro. All right, have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Cheers.